Hello, horror lover. Are you ready for a long night of nightmares? Before we begin, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel, and especially leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to know. Click the like button, all of this because the fluorescent lights of the university lab buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the stack of papers before me. My hand hovered over the final page, pen poised to sign. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through my veins. "Are you sure about this, Mia?" Dr. Evelyn Chen, the lead researcher, asked. Her dark eyes studied me intently from behind thick-rimmed glasses. "Once you sign, there's no going back." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I'm sure, Dr. Chen. This could change everything." My mind raced with the possibilities. Perfect recall. The ability to remember everything I've ever learned, seen, or experienced. As a grad student struggling to keep up with the demanding neuroscience program at Boston University, this seemed like a godsend. "You understand the risks, right?" Dr. Chen pressed. "This is experimental technology. We've had promising results in animal trials, but you'll be among the first human subjects." I nodded, my resolve strengthening. "I've read through all the documentation. I know the risks, but I also know the potential benefits. This could revolutionize the field of memory enhancement." With a final surge of determination, I scrawled my signature across the bottom of the consent form. The scratching of pen on paper seemed to echo in the quiet lab. Dr. Chen's assistant, a lanky grad student named Tom, let out a low whistle. "Brave girl," he murmured, earning a sharp look from Dr. Chen. "Well then," Dr. Chen said, gathering the papers. "Let's begin the procedure." As they led me to the preparation area, my eyes darted around the lab. Sleek machines hummed quietly, their purposes a mystery to me. The sterile smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils, reminding me of countless hours spent in similar labs throughout my academic career. "Strip down to your underwear and put this on," Tom instructed, handing me a thin hospital gown. "Dr. Chen will be back in a few minutes to start the IV." As I changed, my mind wandered to how I'd ended up here. The flyer on the student bulletin board had caught my eye weeks ago. Volunteers needed for groundbreaking memory enhancement study. At first, I'd dismissed it as another crackpot experiment, but curiosity got the better of me, and after attending an information session, I was hooked. The door opened, and Dr. Chen returned, pushing a cart laden with equipment. "Ready, Mia?" she asked, her tone professional but kind. I nodded, settling onto the examination table. The paper crinkled beneath me as I lay back, my heart rate picking up again. "I'm going to explain each step as we go along," Dr. Chen said, preparing an IV line. "The first step is to introduce a specially designed nanoparticle solution into your bloodstream. These nanoparticles are programmed to target specific areas of your brain associated with memory formation and retention." I winced slightly as the needle slid into my arm. "Will it hurt?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Dr. Chen shook her head. "You shouldn't feel any pain. You might experience a slight tingling sensation as the nanoparticles begin to work, but that's normal." As the clear liquid began to flow into my veins, I could almost imagine the microscopic particles racing through my body, ready to rewrite the very fabric of my mind. "Now," Dr. Chen continued, "we're going to use a focused ultrasound device to guide the nanoparticles to the target areas of your brain. This part of the procedure will take about an hour. It's important that you remain as still as possible." A large, dome-shaped machine was positioned over my head. As it hummed to life, I closed my eyes, trying to calm my racing thoughts. "How will I know if it's working?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The effects won't be immediate," Dr. Chen explained. "Over the next few days, you should notice an improvement in your ability to recall information. We'll be conducting a series of tests to measure the enhancement." The next hour passed in a blur of beeping machines and hushed conversations between Dr. Chen and her team. True to her word, I felt no pain, just an odd tingling sensation that seemed to dance across my scalp. Finally, the machine was pulled away, and Dr. Chen's face appeared above me, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You did great, Mia. The procedure is complete." As I sat up, the room spun slightly. Tom steadied me with a hand on my shoulder. "Easy there," he said. "Take it slow." "How do you feel?" Dr. Chen asked, shining a penlight into my eyes. I blinked, taking stock of my body. "A little dizzy," I admitted. "But otherwise I feel normal. Should I feel different?" Dr. Chen chuckled. "Not yet. Give it time. Now I want you to go home and rest. No studying, no excessive mental stimulation. Just relax and let your brain adjust. Come back tomorrow morning and we'll run some initial tests." As I changed back into my clothes, a mix of emotions swirled within me. Excitement, anxiety, hope, and a touch of fear. What if it didn't work? What if it worked too well? I stepped out of the lab into the cool Boston evening. The city bustled around me, oblivious to the potential breakthrough that had just taken place. As I walked to the T station, I couldn't help but feel like a different person, unchanged on the outside but fundamentally altered within. Back in my small studio apartment, I tried to follow Dr. Chen's instructions to relax. But my mind was racing, imagining the possibilities that lay ahead. I picked up a book from my nightstand, a dense neurobiology text I'd been struggling with. "Just a peek," I muttered to myself, flipping it open to a random page. My eyes skimmed over a complex diagram of neural pathways. To my amazement, the information seemed to flow into my mind with unprecedented clarity. I snapped the book shut, my heart pounding. Was it already working, or was this just the power of suggestion? Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, my dreams a kaleidoscope of memories and imagined futures. When my alarm blared at 7 a.m., I was already wide awake. I practically ran to the lab, arriving well before my scheduled appointment. Dr. Chen was already there, looking as if she hadn't slept either. "Mia," she greeted me, her eyes bright with anticipation. "How are you feeling?" I think it's working," I said breathlessly. "Last night I looked at one of my textbooks and it was like the information just flowed into my brain." Dr. Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Already? That's faster than we anticipated. Let's run some tests." The next few hours were a whirlwind of cognitive assessments, memory games, and brain scans. With each test, my performance exceeded not only my previous baselines, but the researchers' most optimistic projections. "This is remarkable," Dr. Chen murmured, poring over the results. "Your recall ability has improved by over 200% in just 12 hours, and there's no sign of cognitive strain or adverse effects." Elation washed over me. It had worked, better than anyone had dared to hope. "What's next?" I asked eagerly. Dr. Chen looked up from her charts, a cautious smile on her face. "We continue to monitor you closely. I want you to keep a detailed journal of any changes you notice. And Mia," she added, her tone turning serious, "remember that you're venturing into uncharted territory. Be careful." As I left the lab that day, the world seemed brighter, sharper. Every sight, sound, and smell etched itself into my memory with perfect clarity. I felt invincible, ready to take on any academic challenge. Little did I know that this gift would soon become my curse, that the inability to forget would prove to be a burden heavier than I could have ever imagined. But in that moment, walking across the sunlit campus quad, I was filled with nothing but hope and excitement for the future that lay ahead. The decision I had made, the consent form I had signed, had set me on a path that would change my life forever. For better or for worse, I was about to embark on a journey into the depths of human memory, one from which there would be no return. The lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy as students filed in for the midterm exam. I sat in the front row, a calm island in a sea of anxiety. While my classmates furiously flipped through notes and muttered facts under their breath, I closed my eyes, letting my enhanced mind sift through the vast repository of information I'd accumulated over the past few weeks. "All right, settle down." Professor Harrington's voice boomed across the room. The silver-haired neurobiologist surveyed the class with a mix of amusement and pity. You have 2 hours. Begin. As soon as the exam papers hit our desks, the frantic scratching of pens filled the air. I took a deep breath and opened my eyes, scanning the questions. A smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. This was going to be easier than I thought. With startling clarity, I recalled every lecture, every diagram, every footnote in the textbook. The answers flowed from my pen effortlessly, each fact perfectly preserved in my mind. I finished in record time, my paper a testament to the miracle of my enhanced memory. As I handed in my exam, Professor Harrington raised an eyebrow. "Finished already, Ms. Thompson? Either you're very confident or very unprepared." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm confident, Professor. Your lectures on synaptic plasticity were particularly enlightening." His eyes widened slightly, no doubt recalling that he'd only briefly touched on that advanced topic in passing. "Well," he said, a note of intrigue in his voice, "I look forward to reading your answers." The next day, as I strolled into the lab for my weekly checkup with Dr. Chen, I couldn't keep the grin off my face. "Someone's in a good mood," Dr. Chen observed, looking up from her computer. "I aced my midterm," I announced proudly. "And not just aced it, I'm pretty sure I got a perfect score." I remembered everything, Dr. Chen. Every single thing. She smiled, but I noticed a flicker of something, concern, in her eyes. "That's wonderful, Mia. But remember, we're still in the early stages of this study. We need to monitor you closely for any side effects." I waved off her concern. "I feel great. Better than great, actually. It's like I've unlocked a superpower." Dr. Chen's lips thinned. "That's not quite how I'd put it. This isn't a comic book, Mia. It's serious neuroscience with potential risks we don't fully understand yet." But I was barely listening, too caught up in my own excitement. "Do you realize what this could mean? Not just for me, but for everyone. Imagine a world where forgetting is a thing of the past, where every student can recall their lessons perfectly, where no one ever loses their keys or forgets an anniversary." "Mia," Dr. Chen interrupted, her tone sharp enough to cut through my enthusiasm. "I need you to understand something. Memory, normal, human memory, is selective for a reason. Our brains aren't designed to remember everything. There's a natural process of filtering and forgetting that's crucial for our mental health." I frowned, not liking where this was going. "But isn't that what we're trying to change? To improve upon nature?" Dr. Chen sighed, removing her glasses to rub the bridge of her nose. "We're trying to enhance memory, yes. But there's a balance to be struck. Promise me you'll report any unusual experiences, no matter how small they seem." "Of course," I agreed, though in my heart I couldn't imagine anything negative coming from this gift I'd been given. As the weeks passed, my academic performance soared to new heights. Late-night study sessions became a thing of the past, as I effortlessly absorbed information from a single reading. My thesis research progressed at an unprecedented pace, drawing attention from professors and peers alike. One evening, as I pored over data in the graduate student lounge, my friend Sarah plopped down beside me, her face a mix of awe and envy. "Okay, spill," she demanded. "What's your secret? You're leaving the rest of us in the dust." I hesitated, remembering Dr. Chen's warnings about keeping the study confidential. "Just found a new study method that works for me," I said evasively. Sarah narrowed her eyes. "Bull. You've changed, Mia. It's like you've become some kind of genius overnight." I laughed, trying to play it off. "Come on, I've always been smart." "Not like this," Sarah insisted. "I've known you since undergrad. You were always good, but now you're on another level entirely. It's almost scary." Her words sent a small shiver down my spine, but I pushed the feeling aside. "You're exaggerating. I've just been working really hard." Sarah didn't look convinced, but she dropped the subject. As she walked away, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. I was leaving my friends behind, widening the gap between us with every perfect test score and breakthrough in my research. But the thrill of success was too intoxicating to resist. When Professor Harrington approached me about presenting my preliminary findings at an upcoming neuroscience conference, I jumped at the chance. The day of the conference arrived, and I stood at the podium, facing a sea of curious faces. My heart raced, but not from nerves, from excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady and confident, "what I'm about to present to you today could revolutionize our understanding of memory formation and retention." As I launched into my presentation, I could see the audience's initial skepticism give way to interest, then to outright amazement. Every question thrown my way was met with a comprehensive, articulate response. It was as if I had the entire body of neuroscientific knowledge at my fingertips, ready to be accessed at a moment's notice. After the presentation, I was swarmed by attendees eager to discuss my research. Among them was Dr. Lionel Reeves, a renowned neuroscientist whose work I had long admired. "Remarkable presentation, Ms. Thompson," he said, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Your grasp of the subject matter is, well, I'd say beyond your years, but frankly, it's beyond most seasoned researchers I know." I beamed at the compliment. "Thank you, Dr. Reeves. I'm honored you found it interesting." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, I think you're onto something big here. Have you considered the implications of your research beyond academia? There are some private sector companies that would be very interested in this kind of cognitive enhancement." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't really thought about it," I admitted. Dr. Reeves pressed a business card into my hand. "Think about it. The potential applications and the potential profits are enormous." As he walked away, I stared at the card, my mind racing with possibilities. Fame, fortune, a chance to change the world. It all seemed within reach. Later that night, as I lay in my hotel bed, sleep eluded me. My mind buzzed with the events of the day, replaying every moment of my triumph with perfect clarity. I could recall every face in the audience, every question asked, every nuance of every conversation. It was exhilarating. And yet, as the night wore on and sleep continued to evade me, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. Was this constant mental activity normal? Was there such a thing as remembering too much? I pushed the doubts aside. I was on top of the world, unstoppable. This was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. As the first rays of dawn crept through the hotel curtains, I made a decision. I would push forward, taking my research and my enhanced mind to its limits. Little did I know that those limits would be tested sooner and more severely than I could have ever imagined. The thrill of these early days, the intoxicating rush of success, was about to give way to a reality far more complex and dangerous than I had ever considered. But in that moment, basking in the afterglow of my academic triumph, I felt invincible. The world was at my feet, and my perfect memory was the key to unlocking every door. The future stretched out before me, bright and full of promise. If only I had known then what that future truly held. The aroma of my mother's famous pot roast filled the air as I stepped into my childhood home. It was a smell that had always brought comfort, a reminder of family dinners and simpler times. But tonight, it hit me like a tidal wave, unleashing a flood of memories so vivid and intense that I staggered against the wall. "Mia, are you all right, honey?" My mother's voice came from the kitchen, laced with concern. I blinked rapidly, trying to ground myself in the present. "I'm fine, Mom. Just a little dizzy." But I wasn't fine. As I made my way to the dining room, every object, every photograph on the wall seemed to scream with significance. The chipped vase on the side table. I suddenly recalled knocking it over when I was 6. The fear of punishment, the tears I'd shed, the family portrait from my high school graduation. I could smell the perfume I'd worn that day, feel the scratch of my polyester gown against my skin. "There's my girl." My father's booming voice snapped me back to the present. He enveloped me in a bear hug, and for a moment I relaxed into his familiar embrace. But then it started again. The feeling of his scratchy beard against my cheek triggered a cascade of memories. Every hug, every time he'd kissed me goodnight, every proud pat on the back. It was overwhelming, like drowning in a sea of my own past. "Mia?" My mother's voice again, closer now. "You look pale. Are you sure you're feeling okay?" I forced a smile. "Just tired from all the studying, I guess." We sat down to dinner, and I tried to focus on the conversation, on the here and now. But every bite of food, every clinking of cutlery against plates, every familiar family anecdote sent me spiraling into perfect recollections of past meals, past conversations. "So, how's that fancy research of yours going?" my father asked, a note of pride in his voice. I opened my mouth to respond, but instead of my recent achievements, what came out was, "Do you remember when I was 7 and I told you I wanted to be a scientist? We were having spaghetti and I got sauce all over my face and you laughed and said I'd better learn to be neater if I wanted to work in a lab." My parents exchanged a puzzled look. "That's quite a memory you've got there, sweetheart," my mother said slowly. "Yeah, it's like I can see it happening right now," I said, my voice distant. "I can smell the garlic bread, feel the texture of the tablecloth. It was the blue checkered one, wasn't it? Before Aunt Linda gave you the floral one for your anniversary." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I could see the concern growing in my parents' eyes, but I couldn't stop. Every attempt to steer the conversation to the present only seemed to trigger more memories, each one as vivid as if it were happening right now. By the time dessert was served, the tension was palpable. I excused myself, claiming a headache, and retreated to my old bedroom. But even there, I found no respite. Every poster on the wall, every stuffed animal, every book on the shelf was a portal to a perfect memory. I curled up on my childhood bed, overwhelmed by the weight of my own past. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my parents whispering outside my door. "I'm worried about her, John," my mother was saying. "She's not herself. Maybe we should suggest she see someone." "She's probably just stressed from all that studying," my father replied, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to sort through the jumble of memories and emotions. For the first time since the procedure, I felt a flicker of fear. Was this enhanced memory a gift, or was it becoming a curse? Back at my apartment in Boston, I tried to lose myself in my research, hoping that focusing on work would provide some relief. But as I pored over my notes, each fact, each data point, each reference triggered a perfect recollection of when and where I'd learned it. It was like trying to read a book while 1,000 voices shouted different stories in my ears. A knock at the door startled me out of my mental chaos. It was Sarah, my friend from the program. "Hey, stranger," she said as I let her in. "Thought I'd check in on you. You've been pretty scarce lately." I managed a weak smile. "Just busy with the research, you know how it is." Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied my face. "Mia, what's going on with you? And don't give me that 'just busy' crap. You look like you haven't slept in days." For a moment I was tempted to tell her everything, about the study, the procedure, the overwhelming flood of memories, but Dr. Chen's warnings about confidentiality held me back. "I've just been, remembering a lot of things lately," I said carefully. "It's been a bit overwhelming." Sarah sat down on my couch, patting the spot next to her. "Talk to me. What kind of things?" I sank down beside her, suddenly exhausted. "Everything, Sarah. I remember everything. Every moment, every conversation, every feeling. It's like there's no filter anymore. No way to prioritize what's important and what's not." "That doesn't sound like just a good memory, Mia," Sarah said softly. "That sounds intense. Maybe you should talk to someone about this." I shook my head vehemently. No, I can handle it. It's fine. It's probably just stress or something." But even as I said the words, another memory hit me. Sarah and I, freshman year, pulling an all-nighter for our first big exam. The smell of stale coffee, the sound of rain against the dorm window, the giddy laughter as delirium set in around 3 a.m. It was so vivid, so real, that for a moment I wasn't sure which was the present, that night or this one. "Mia?" Sarah's voice sounded far away. "Mia, you're scaring me. Where did you just go?" I blinked, focusing on her worried face. "I'm sorry, I remembered something from years ago, but it felt like it was happening right now." Sarah reached out, squeezing my hand. "Okay, that's it. I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't normal. You need help, Mia." "No!" I pulled away, suddenly angry. "I don't need help. I'm fine. This is a good thing. Do you know how much this has helped my research? How much I've accomplished?" "At what cost?" Sarah shot back. "Look at yourself, Mia. You're a mess. This isn't healthy." Her words stung, mostly because a part of me knew she was right. But I couldn't admit it, couldn't face the possibility that my perfect memory might be more of a curse than a blessing. "I think you should go," I said coldly. Sarah stood up, hurt and concern warring in her eyes. "Fine. But please, Mia, think about what I said. Whatever this is, it's changing you, and not for the better." After she left, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, my mind a whirlwind of memories and emotions. I thought about calling Dr. Chen, telling her about these intense experiences. But the fear of losing this ability, of going back to being ordinary, held me back. As night fell, I found myself unable to sleep, tossing and turning as memories played out behind my closed eyelids. Every embarrassing moment, every failure, every harsh word ever spoken to me echoed in my mind with perfect clarity. I got up, pacing my small apartment, trying to outrun my own thoughts. But there was no escape. Every object I looked at, every sound I heard, every smell that wafted through the air triggered another memory, another perfect recollection that demanded my attention. As dawn broke, I stood at my window, watching the city come to life. I felt hollowed out, exhausted, but somehow more alert than ever. The weight of every moment I'd ever lived pressed down on me, threatening to crush me under its immensity. For the first time since the procedure, I allowed myself to wonder, had I made a terrible mistake? Was the ability to remember everything truly a gift, or was it slowly driving me mad? The shrill ring of my phone cut through my thoughts. It was Dr. Chen. "Mia," she said, her voice tense. "We need to talk. There have been developments with some of the other study participants. I need you to come to the lab immediately." As I hung up, a chill ran down my spine. The first cracks in my perfect memory had appeared, and I had a sinking feeling that things were about to get much, much worse. The sterile corridors of the research facility seemed to close in around me as I followed Dr. Chen to her office. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed incessantly, each flicker triggering a cascade of memories. Every visit, every test, every moment spent in this building perfectly preserved in my mind. "Sit down, Mia," Dr. Chen said, her voice tight with concern. She perched on the edge of her desk, her usual composure noticeably strained. I sank into the chair, my heart pounding. "What's going on, Dr. Chen? You said there were developments with other participants?" She nodded gravely. 3 of our subjects have experienced severe psychological distress. 2 have been hospitalized. The words hit me like a physical blow. Hospitalized? What happened to them? Dr. Chen's eyes met mine, and I saw fear there, a sight that chilled me to my core. They reported being overwhelmed by memories, unable to focus on the present, experiencing vivid flashbacks that felt more real than their current surroundings. Does any of this sound familiar, Mia? I opened my mouth to deny it, to insist I was fine, but the lie died on my lips. Instead, what came out was a choked sob. "I can't make it stop," I whispered. "Every moment, every memory, it's all there, all the time. I can't filter anything out anymore." "Doctor," Chen's face softened with sympathy. She reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Why didn't you tell me sooner, Mia? We could have intervened earlier." I thought I could handle it, I said, wiping away tears. I thought it was a good thing, being able to remember everything. But now I'm not so sure. Dr. Chen sighed heavily. The human brain isn't designed to retain every piece of information it encounters. There's a natural process of filtering and forgetting that's crucial for our mental health. What we've done, we've disrupted that process. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Can you reverse it? The silence that followed was answer enough. We're working on it, Dr. Chen finally said. But for now, we need to focus on managing your symptoms. I'm prescribing you some medication that should help calm your mind, make the memories less intrusive. I nodded numbly, taking the prescription she offered. As I stood to leave, a thought struck me. Dr. Chen, what about my research, my studies? Her expression was grave. I think it's best if you take a break, Mia. Your health has to come first. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My research, my academic success, it had become my entire identity. The thought of giving it up, even temporarily, sent a wave of panic through me. I stumbled out of the facility, the bright sunlight assaulting my eyes. Each step on the sidewalk triggered a memory. Every time I'd walked this path, every conversation I'd had, every thought that had crossed my mind. It was maddening. At home, I stared at the little orange pill bottle, weighing my options. Part of me rebelled against the idea of dulling my mind, of potentially losing the edge that had propelled me to academic stardom. But another part, a growing part, longed for peace, for a moment's respite from the constant barrage of memories. With shaking hands, I swallowed the first pill. The next few days passed in a haze. The medication dulled the sharpness of the memories, but it also left me feeling sluggish, disconnected. I drifted through my apartment like a ghost, unable to focus on anything for long. On the third day, my phone rang. It was my girlfriend, Emma. Mia, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days. Her voice was a mix of concern and frustration. I'm sorry, I mumbled. I haven't been feeling well. Do you need me to come over? I can bring soup or... No. I cut her off, more sharply than I intended. The thought of seeing her, of adding more memories to my already overloaded mind, filled me with panic. No, I just need some time alone. To rest. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Mia, what's really going on? You've been different lately. Distant. I feel like I'm losing you. Her words triggered a flood of memories. Our first date, our first kiss, every moment of joy and every argument we'd ever had. It was overwhelming, suffocating. I could feel my breath coming in short gasps. I can't do this right now, Emma. I'm sorry. I have to go. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Days blurred into weeks. I stopped attending classes, stopped responding to calls and messages. My apartment became my fortress, my prison. I tried to lose myself in mindless TV shows, hoping to drown out the cacophony of memories in my head. But even that backfired. Each scene, each line of dialogue, each commercial jingle became another perfect memory, another piece of information my brain refused to let go. One afternoon, a knock at my door startled me out of my stupor. I ignored it at first, but the knocking persisted, growing more insistent. Mia, I know you're in there. Please open the door. It was Emma. I froze, torn between the desire to see her and the fear of what that might trigger in my mind. Mia, please, I'm worried about you. We're all worried about you. Slowly, reluctantly, I made my way to the door. When I opened it, the look of shock on Emma's face told me just how far I'd fallen. Oh, Mia, she breathed, taking in my disheveled appearance, the dark circles under my eyes. What's happened to you? I stood aside wordlessly, letting her in. Emma looked around the apartment, taking in the unwashed dishes, the piles of laundry, the general air of neglect. Talk to me, she said softly. guiding me to the couch. Whatever this is, we can face it together. I wanted to tell her everything about the study, the enhanced memory, the overwhelming flood of recollections that threatened to drown me. But as I opened my mouth, all that came out was a choked sob. Emma pulled me into her arms, and for a moment, I allowed myself to be held. But then the memories came crashing in. Every time she'd held me like this, every whispered word of comfort, every shared moment of intimacy. It was too much. I pulled away abruptly, my whole body trembling. "You need to go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What?" "Mia, no, I'm not leaving you like this." "You don't understand," I said, my voice rising. I can't do this. I remember everything, Emma. Every moment we've ever shared, every word we've ever said to each other, it's all there all the time, and I can't make it stop." Emma reached for me, but I flinched away. "Mia, you're not making sense. What do you mean you remember everything?" "It was supposed to be a gift," I said, laughing bitterly. "Perfect recall. The ability to remember everything I've ever learned, ever experienced. But it's not a gift. It's a curse. I can't forget anything, Emma. Not the good times, not the bad times, not the most mundane details of every day. It's all there, all the time, and it's driving me insane." Emma's face was a mask of confusion and concern. "Mia, I think you need help. Professional help. This isn't normal." Her words, well-intentioned as they were, cut deep. "Normal? No, I'm not normal anymore. I'll never be normal again. And I can't drag you down with me." "What are you saying?" Emma's voice was small, afraid. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. "I'm saying goodbye, Emma. I can't be with you. I can't be with anyone, not like this." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. "Mia, please, don't do this. We can get through this together. I love you." Each word was like a dagger to my heart. Each tear on her cheek, another perfect, painful memory seared into my mind. "I love you too," I whispered. "That's why I have to let you go." I watched as Emma's face crumpled, as she gathered her things and walked out the door. The sound of her muffled sobs echoed in the hallway, another memory I knew I'd never be able to forget. As the door closed behind her, I sank to the floor, my back against the wall. The weight of every memory, every moment, every feeling I'd ever experienced pressed down on me. I could feel myself slipping, falling into an abyss of my own making. In that moment, staring at my reflection in the blank TV screen, I hardly recognized the person looking back at me. Pale, gaunt, with wild eyes and unkempt hair. Was this the price of perfect memory? Had I sacrificed everything, my studies, my relationships, my very sense of self, in pursuit of an ability that was now destroying me? As the sun set outside my window, casting long shadows across my cluttered apartment, I realized with a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning of my downward spiral. The worst I feared was yet to come. The incessant buzzing of my phone pierced through the silence of my apartment. I stared at the screen, watching as the name Mom flashed for the 7th time that day. With a trembling hand, I reached out to silence it, unable to bear the thought of hearing her worried voice again. As the screen went dark, I caught a glimpse of my reflection, hollow-eyed, pale, a ghost of my former self. I barely recognized the person staring back at me. The apartment around me was a reflection of my mental state. Dishes piled high in the sink, takeout containers littering every surface, clothes strewn about haphazardly. I couldn't remember the last time I'd cleaned, or showered, or left this space that had become both my sanctuary and my prison. I shuffled to the window, peering out at the bustling Boston street below. People hurried by, living their lives, creating new memories with each passing moment. The sight filled me with a mixture of longing and dread. "No," I muttered to myself, pulling the curtains shut. "Can't risk it. Can't make new memories. Can't handle any more." My phone buzzed again, this time with a text. It was Sarah. "Mia, please, we're all worried sick. Just let us know you're okay." I typed out a response, deleted it, typed again. Finally, I settled on a simple, "I'm fine, need space." As soon as I hit send, regret washed over me. That message would now be etched into my perfect memory forever. Another moment of pushing away those who cared about me, another brick in the wall I was building around myself. I sank onto the couch, flipping on the TV in a desperate attempt to drown out my thoughts. A rerun of an old sitcom flickered to life, and for a moment, I allowed myself to be drawn into the familiar plot. But then it hit me. I'd seen this episode before. Suddenly, I was reliving that moment in perfect detail. It had been a rainy Tuesday evening in my sophomore year. Emma had been there laughing at the jokes, her hand warm in mine. The smell of popcorn had filled the air, and I shut off the TV with a violent jab of the remote. Silence descended once more, broken only by the sound of my ragged breathing. "Stop it," I hissed, pressing my palms against my temples. "Just stop remembering, please." But the memories wouldn't stop. They never stopped. Every object in the room, every scent, every sound triggered a cascade of perfect recollections. The coffee mug on the table reminded me of every cup of coffee I'd ever had. The textbook peeking out from under a pile of laundry brought back every lecture, every study session, every exam I'd ever taken. I stumbled to the bathroom, fumbling for the orange pill bottle Dr. Chen had prescribed. My hands shook as I swallowed 2 pills dry, praying for the numbing effect to kick in quickly. As I waited for the medication to take effect, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. The person staring back at me was a stranger, wild-eyed, unkempt, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of countless sleepless nights. "Who are you?" I whispered to my reflection. "What have you become?" The face in the mirror offered no answers, only a haunted stare that seemed to pierce right through me. A sharp knock at the door startled me out of my reverie. For a moment I considered ignoring it, as I had done so many times before. But something, desperation perhaps, or a flicker of my old self, propelled me towards the sound. I opened the door a crack, peering out cautiously. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Goldstein, an elderly woman who had always been kind to me. "Mia, dear," she said, her voice laced with concern. "I haven't seen you in weeks. Are you all right?" I forced a smile, though it felt more like a grimace. "I'm fine, Mrs. Goldstein. Just busy with research." She didn't look convinced. "You don't look well, dear. Have you been eating? I could bring you some of my chicken soup." "No," I cut her off, more sharply than I intended. The thought of tasting her soup, of adding another vivid sensory memory to my overloaded mind, filled me with panic. "I mean, no thank you. I'm on a special diet for my research, but I appreciate the offer." Mrs. Goldstein's brow furrowed with worry. "If you're sure, dear. But please don't hesitate to ask if you need anything. We neighbors need to look out for each other." I nodded quickly, already closing the door. "Thank you, Mrs. Goldstein. I'll keep that in mind." As the door clicked shut, I leaned against it, my heart racing. Even that brief interaction had been almost more than I could bear. Every detail, the concern in Mrs. Goldstein's eyes, the faint scent of lavender that always surrounded her, the slight tremor in her aged hands, was now etched into my memory with perfect clarity, joining the overwhelming flood of recollections that threatened to drown me. I slid down to the floor, drawing my knees to my chest. The silence of the apartment pressed in around me, broken only by the sound of my ragged breathing. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time had become a fluid, unreliable thing in my isolated world. I drifted in and out of consciousness, each waking moment a struggle against the tide of memories that threatened to overwhelm me. A persistent beeping eventually roused me from my stupor. It took me a moment to realize it was coming from my laptop, buried under a pile of papers on my desk. With effort, I dragged myself over to it. It was a video call request from Dr. Chen. My finger hovered over the decline button, but a small voice in the back of my mind, the The part of me that still clung to hope urged me to answer. Dr. Chen's face appeared on the screen, her eyes widening as she took in my appearance. "Mia," she breathed. "Oh, Mia, what's happened to you?" I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and foreign to my ears. "What's happened? You happened, Dr. Chen. Your miracle treatment happened." Her face fell, guilt and concern warring in her expression. "Mia, we never intended for this to happen. We're working around the clock to find a solution, to reverse the effects." "Reverse?" I cut her off. "How can you reverse this? How can you make me forget? Do you have any idea what it's like living like this? Remembering every moment, every detail, every feeling with perfect clarity?" Dr. Chen leaned closer to the camera, her voice urgent. "Mia, listen to me. You need to come back to the lab. We can help you manage the symptoms, work on developing coping mechanisms." "No!" I shouted, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. "No more labs, no more tests. I can't make any more memories. I can't handle any more input." "Mia, please," Dr. Chen pleaded. "Isolation isn't the answer. It's only going to make things worse. You need support. You need—" I slammed the laptop shut, cutting off her words. My breathing came in short, sharp gasps as panic clawed at my chest. "No more," I whispered to the empty room. "No more memories. No more people. No more anything." In that moment, I made a decision. I would cut myself off completely. No more interactions, no more stimuli, no more new experiences to add to the overwhelming flood of memories in my mind. With shaking hands, I unplugged my laptop, silenced my phone, and drew the curtains tight against the outside world. I moved through the apartment, turning off lights, unplugging appliances, eliminating any source of sensory input I could. Finally, in the dark and silence of my bedroom, I curled up on the bed, pulling the covers over my head. Here, in this cocoon of isolation, I would be safe. No new memories could reach me here. As I lay in the darkness, I tried to empty my mind, to find some respite from the constant barrage of perfect recollections. But even in the absence of external stimuli, my enhanced memory continued its relentless assault. I remembered every moment of my life with crystal clarity, every joy, every sorrow, every mundane detail. I remembered the excitement of starting college, the pride of my first academic achievement, the thrill of falling in love. But I also remembered every failure, every harsh word, every moment of pain and embarrassment. Tears leaked from my closed eyes as I realized the true horror of my situation. In my desperate attempt to escape new memories, I had trapped myself with the old ones. There was no escape, no respite, no moment of peace. As the hours ticked by in my self-imposed isolation, I began to lose track of where memories ended and reality began. Was I still lying in my dark bedroom? Or was I reliving every moment I'd ever spent in bed? Was the sound of my breathing real? Or was it a perfect recollection of every breath I'd ever taken? In the depths of my isolation, surrounded by the unending flood of memories, I felt myself slipping away. The Mia I had been, ambitious, bright-eyed, full of hope for the future, seemed like a stranger, a character in one of the many perfect recollections that now made up my existence. As consciousness faded into a fitful sleep, one thought echoed through my mind. How long could I survive like this, trapped in a prison of my own perfect memories? The incessant buzzing of my phone cut through the silence like a knife, each vibration sending shockwaves through my fragile psyche. I had lost track of how long I'd been curled up in the dark, trying desperately to escape the torrent of memories that flooded my mind. Days? Weeks? Time had become a meaningless concept in my self-imposed isolation. With trembling hands, I reached for the phone, squinting at the harsh light of the screen. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of unread messages. The names blurred together. Mom, Dad, Emma, Sarah, Dr. Chen. each one a reminder of the life I was trying so hard to escape. As I stared at the screen, a new message popped up. It was from Emma. "Mia, please. We're all worried sick. If you don't respond, we're coming over. We can't let this go on any longer." Panic surged through me. The thought of seeing them, of adding more memories to my already overloaded mind, was unbearable. With a cry of frustration, I hurled the phone against the wall. The sound of shattering glass filled the room, followed by a deafening silence. "No more," I whispered, my voice hoarse from disuse. "No more memories. No more people. No more anything." I stumbled to my feet, the room spinning around me. How long had it been since I'd eaten? Since I'd slept properly? The details were lost in the fog of my perfect memory, indistinguishable from 1,000 other moments of hunger and exhaustion. As I made my way to the bathroom, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. The person staring back at me was a stranger, wild-eyed, gaunt, with matted hair and sunken cheeks. Was this really me? Or was it just another memory, another version of myself preserved in perfect detail? "Who are you?" I asked the reflection, my voice cracking. "What have you become?" The face in the mirror offered no answers, only a haunted stare that seemed to pierce right through me. In that moment, something inside me snapped. "Stop it!" I screamed, my fist connecting with the mirror. The glass shattered, shards raining down into the sink and embedding themselves in my knuckles. The pain was sharp, immediate, and for a blessed moment it drowned out the constant flood of memories. I stared at my bleeding hand, transfixed. The pain was real, present. It anchored me to the now in a way nothing else had for weeks. Without thinking, I grabbed a large shard of glass, holding it up to the light. "Maybe," I whispered, a manic gleam in my eye. "Maybe if I hurt enough, the pain will make the memories stop." I pressed the glass against my forearm, watching as a thin line of red welled up. The pain was exquisite, focusing my mind like nothing else had. For a moment, just a moment, the torrent of memories receded. But then, as quickly as it had come, the relief vanished. My perfect memory kicked in, and suddenly I was reliving every cut, every scrape, every injury I'd ever experienced. The pain multiplied, echoing through my mind in an endless feedback loop. I dropped the glass shard, stumbling backwards until I hit the wall, sliding down to the cold tile floor. Sobs racked my body as the full weight of my situation crashed down on me. There was no escape, not even in pain. My enhanced memory had turned everything, even potential relief, into another form of torture. As I sat there, blood dripping from my hand and arm, a new sound cut through my despair. Knocking. Loud, insistent knocking at my apartment door. "Mia, are you in there? It's Emma and Sarah. Please open the door." Their voices, so familiar and yet so distant, triggered another cascade of memories. Every conversation we'd ever had, every laugh, every argument, all of it played out in my mind with perfect clarity. "Go away," I shouted, my voice raw and broken. "Please, just go away." But the knocking continued, growing more frantic. "Mia, we're not leaving until we know you're okay. If you don't open the door, we're calling the police." The threat of more people, more stimuli, more memories, sent me into a panic. I scrambled to my feet, looking wildly around the bathroom for an escape. My eyes landed on the small window above the toilet. Without thinking, I climbed onto the toilet seat, fumbling with the window latch. It was tight, rusted from disuse, but adrenaline gave me strength. With a screech of protesting metal, it finally gave way. Cool night air rushed in, carrying with it the sounds and smells of the city. For a moment I hesitated. Part of me, the part that was still rational, knew that climbing out a fourth-floor window was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But the thought of facing Emma and Sarah, of adding more memories to my already overloaded mind, was even more terrifying. I was halfway out the window when I heard the sound of splintering wood. They had broken down the door. "Mia?" Emma's voice closer now. Oh my God, Sarah, there's blood in the sink. Their footsteps approached the bathroom. In a panic, I pushed myself the rest of the way out the window, my feet scrabbling for purchase on the narrow ledge outside. Sarah's scream pierced the night as she burst into the bathroom, seeing me perched precariously on the ledge. What are you doing? Come back inside. I pressed myself against the building's facade, my heart pounding. The cool brick against my back grounded me, providing a momentary respite from the flood of memories. I can't, I called back, my voice breaking. I can't make any more memories. I can't handle any more input. Please, just let me go. Emma appeared at the window, her face a mask of terror and concern. Mia, please. Whatever you're going through, we can face it together. Just come back inside. We'll figure this out. Her words, well-intentioned as they were, triggered another onslaught of memories. Every promise we'd ever made to each other, every time we'd faced challenges together. It all came rushing back with painful clarity. You don't understand, I said, inching further along the ledge. I remember everything, Emma. Every moment, every word, every feeling. It's too much. I can't live like this anymore. Mia, stop, Sarah shouted, reaching out the window towards me. This isn't the answer. Please, just take my hand. We'll get you help. I looked at her outstretched hand, then down at the street far below. For a moment I was tempted. The idea of falling, of finally escaping the prison of my perfect memory, was almost irresistible. But as I teetered on the edge, a new memory surfaced. It was from the day I'd signed up for Dr. Chen's study. I remembered my excitement, my hope for the future. I remembered thinking that this could change everything, that it could make me better, smarter, more capable. I just wanted to be better, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I never wanted this. I know, Mia, Emma said softly, her own eyes glistening with tears. I know you didn't, but this isn't the end. We can get through this together. Please just come back inside. For a long moment, I stood there on the ledge, balanced between the abyss below and the overwhelming flood of memories within. Then, slowly, hesitantly, I reached out and took Sarah's hand. As they pulled me back through the window, I collapsed into their arms, sobs racking my body. The physical contact triggered a new wave of memories. Every hug, every touch, every moment of comfort we'd ever shared. But for once, I didn't fight it. I let the memories come, anchoring myself in the present through the warmth of their embrace. It's okay, Emma murmured, stroking my hair. We've got you. You're not alone in this. As we sat there on the bathroom floor, surrounded by broken glass and dried blood, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. I need help, I whispered, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. I can't do this on my own anymore. Sarah squeezed my hand. That's the first step, Mia. Admitting you need help. We'll be with you every step of the way. As the adrenaline faded, exhaustion washed over me. The weight of every memory, every moment I'd been trying to escape, pressed down on me. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I didn't face it alone. What now? I asked, my voice small and uncertain. Emma helped me to my feet, careful of the glass on the floor. Now we get you cleaned up. Then we call Dr. Chen. We'll figure out the next steps together. As they led me out of the bathroom, I caught sight of my reflection in a shard of the broken mirror. The person looking back at me was still a far cry from the Mia I used to be. But there was something different in her eyes now. A spark of life. A glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be long and difficult. My perfect memory was still there, still overwhelming. But as I leaned on Emma and Sarah, letting them guide me back into the world, I realized something. Maybe, just maybe, with help and support, I could learn to live with this gift-turned curse. Maybe I could find a way to navigate the flood of memories without drowning in them. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to think about the future, not with dread, but with cautious optimism. The breaking point had come and gone, and I had survived. Now it was time to start picking up the pieces. The sterile white walls of the psychiatric ward closed in around me as I shuffled down the corridor, my steps hesitant and unsteady. The smell of disinfectant burned my nostrils, triggering a cascade of memories from every hospital I'd ever visited. I could recall with perfect clarity the texture of every exam table, the beeping of every monitor, the taste of every bland hospital meal I'd ever eaten. "This way, Mia," Dr. Chen said gently, guiding me with a hand on my elbow. Her touch, meant to be comforting, sent another wave of memories crashing through my mind. Every moment she'd touched me during the experiments, every time she'd drawn blood or attached electrodes to my scalp. I flinched away from her, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I can't do this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "There are too many memories here already." Dr. Chen's face softened with sympathy. "I know it's overwhelming, Mia, but this is the best place for you right now. We have specialists here who can help you manage your symptoms." As we approached the nurses' station, a young woman in scrubs looked up, her smile bright and professional. "You must be Mia," she said, standing to greet us. "I'm Nurse Olivia. We've been expecting you." I nodded mutely, unable to form words. The nurse's cheerful demeanor was at odds with the turmoil in my mind, and I found myself resenting her easy smile. "Let's get you settled in your room," Nurse Olivia continued, seemingly unfazed by my lack of response. She led us down another corridor, her shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. The sound echoed in my head, multiplying into a cacophony of every squeaky shoe I'd ever heard. The room she showed us to was small and sparse. A single bed, a nightstand, a small desk, and a chair. The walls were a pale blue, presumably meant to be calming. To me, they just looked like the inside of a box I was being trapped in. "Here we are," Nurse Olivia said, her voice still cheerful. "Why don't you get settled in? Dinner will be served in about an hour, and then you'll meet with Dr. Rosenberg for your initial evaluation." As soon as she left, I sank onto the bed, my legs no longer able to support me. Dr. Chen hovered uncertainly by the door. "Mia," she began, her voice hesitant. "I know this is difficult, but..." "Difficult?" I cut her off, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Difficult doesn't begin to cover it, Dr. Chen. Do you have any idea what it's like in here?" I tapped my temple. "Every sight, every sound, every smell triggers another perfect memory. I can't escape it. I can't even think straight anymore." Dr. Chen moved to sit beside me on the bed, but I shrank away. She sighed, opting instead for the chair. "I'm so sorry, Mia. We never intended for this to happen, but I promise you we're doing everything we can to find a way to reverse the effects." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since my breakdown. The guilt in her eyes was palpable, the lines of stress etched deeply into her face. In that moment, my perfect memory supplied me with an image of her from the day I'd first volunteered for the study. Younger, more optimistic, full of excitement about the possibilities of her research. "It's not your fault," I said softly, surprising myself with the words. "You couldn't have known." A small smile flickered across Dr. Chen's face, but it quickly faded. "Thank you for saying that, Mia. But the responsibility is still mine, and I promise you I won't rest until we find a solution." After Dr. Chen left, I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence of the room was oppressive, leaving too much space for my memories to fill. I could hear the muffled sounds of the ward beyond my door, footsteps, distant voices, the squeak of a cart being wheeled down the corridor. Each sound triggered its own cascade of memories, threatening to overwhelm me. A soft knock at the door startled me out of my reverie. "Mia?" Nurse Olivia's voice called. "It's time for dinner. Would you like to join the others in the common room, or would you prefer to eat here?" The thought of facing other people, of adding more stimuli and potentially more memories to my already overloaded mind, sent a wave of panic through me. "Here," I called back, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll eat here." Moments later, Nurse Olivia entered with a tray. The smell of hospital food, bland and slightly overcooked, hit me like a physical force. Suddenly, I was reliving every meal I'd ever eaten in a hospital or cafeteria, tasting each one as if it were happening right now. I must have made a sound of distress because Nurse Olivia was suddenly at my side, her hand hovering uncertainly near my shoulder. "Mia? Are you all right?" I shook my head, unable to speak. How could I explain that the simple act of smelling food had triggered a sensory overload that threatened to tear my mind apart? Nurse Olivia's voice softened. "It's okay if you're not hungry right now. We can try again later. Would you like me to take the tray away?" I nodded gratefully, and she removed the offending food. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. "Dr. Rosenberg will be here in about an hour for your evaluation. Try to rest until then, okay?" Rest. The word seemed like a cruel joke. How could I rest when my mind never stopped, when every moment was filled with the perfect recall of a lifetime of experiences? The hour passed in a blur of memories and anxiety. When Dr. Rosenberg finally arrived, I was curled up on the bed, my hands pressed against my ears in a futile attempt to block out the noise in my head. "Hello, Mia," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm Dr. Rosenberg. Do you feel up to talking for a bit?" I uncurled slowly, forcing myself to meet his gaze. He was older than I expected, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I'll try," I managed to say. "Doctor." Rosenberg settled into the chair, his movements deliberate and unhurried. "I've read your file, Mia. Dr. Chen has briefed me on your unique situation. Can you tell me in your own words what you're experiencing?" I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. It's like living in a world where everything is a trigger. Every sight, every sound, every smell sets off a chain reaction of memories. But they're not just vague recollections. They're perfect, vivid recreations of every moment I've ever experienced. It's overwhelming. I can't filter anything out anymore. Dr. Rosenberg nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That sounds incredibly challenging. How have you been coping with this flood of memories?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "Coping? I haven't been coping. I've been hiding, isolating myself, trying desperately to avoid any new experiences that might add to the overload." "And how has that been working for you?" The question, simple as it was, hit me hard. It hasn't, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The memories are still there, even when I'm alone. And now I'm afraid I've lost touch with reality. I can't always tell what's a memory and what's happening now. Dr. Rosenberg leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Mia, I want you to know that what you're experiencing is real, and it's valid. Your brain has been altered in a way that we don't fully understand yet. But I promise you, we're going to do everything we can to help you manage this." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. "How?" I asked, hating how small and desperate my voice sounded. "We'll start with a combination of therapy and medication," Dr. Rosenberg explained. "The medication should help calm your mind, make the memories less intrusive. In therapy, we'll work on developing coping mechanisms, ways to ground yourself in the present, and distinguish between memories and current experiences." As he spoke, I found myself hanging on every word, desperate for any lifeline in the sea of memories I was drowning in. But then, as quickly as it had come, the hope faded. "But what if it doesn't work?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "What if I'm stuck like this forever?" Dr. Rosenberg's expression was serious but kind. "Mia, I won't lie to you. Your case is unique and we can't make any guarantees. But I've seen patients overcome incredible challenges. The brain is remarkably adaptable. With time and effort, I believe you can learn to live with this enhanced memory, to use it as a tool rather than being controlled by it. As our session came to an end, Dr. Rosenberg stood to leave. Get some rest, Mia. We'll start your treatment plan tomorrow. Remember, you're not alone in this. We're here to help you every step of the way. After he left, I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The memories still swirled in my mind, a constant barrage of perfect recollections. But for the first time in weeks, they seemed slightly less overwhelming. The knowledge that there was a plan, that people were working to help me, provided a small anchor in the chaos of my mind. As I drifted off into a fitful sleep, I clung to Dr. Rosenberg's words like a lifeline. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for me yet. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but at least now I had a direction, a goal to work towards. In the sterile confines of the psychiatric ward, surrounded by the echoes of countless memories, I made a silent promise to myself. I would fight this. I would learn to control my enhanced memory, rather than letting it control me. And someday, somehow, I would find my way back to a life worth living. The days in the psychiatric ward blurred together, each one a struggle against the relentless tide of memories that threatened to drown me. The medication Dr. Rosenberg had prescribed dulled the edges of my perfect recall, but it also left me feeling foggy and disconnected. I drifted through the routines of the ward like a ghost, barely engaging with the world around me. It was on a particularly gray Tuesday morning when everything changed. I was sitting in the common room, staring blankly at a puzzle I couldn't bring myself to start, when Nurse Olivia approached me with an unusually bright smile. "Mia," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "There's someone here to see you, a new doctor who's joined the team." I looked up at her, confusion clouding my features. "A new doctor? But I thought Dr. Rosenberg—" "Dr. Rosenberg is still overseeing your case," Nurse Olivia assured me. "But this doctor has some unique experience that might be helpful. Would you like to meet her?" Curiosity, an emotion I hadn't felt in what seemed like ages, stirred within me. I nodded slowly, and Nurse Olivia beamed. "Wonderful. I'll bring her in." Moments later, a woman entered the common room. She was younger than I expected, probably in her early 40s, with kind eyes and a warm smile that seemed to light up the drab surroundings. As soon as our eyes met, I felt something shift in the atmosphere, a subtle change that I couldn't quite explain. "Hello, Mia," she said, her voice soft but confident. "I'm Dr. Samantha Reeves. It's a pleasure to meet you." As she sat down across from me, I found myself studying her intently. There was something about her presence that felt different, calming almost. "Hi," I managed, my voice rusty from disuse. Are you here to fix me?" Dr. Reeves's smile softened. "I'm here to help you, Mia. But you're not broken. You're experiencing something extraordinary, and together, we're going to find a way for you to navigate it." Her words, so different from the clinical detachment I'd grown used to, caught me off guard. You don't think I'm crazy?" "Not at all," Dr. Reeves said firmly. "Your brain has been altered in a way we don't fully understand yet, but that doesn't make you crazy. It makes you unique." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something other than despair. "How can you help me? The memories, they're overwhelming. I can't escape them." Dr. Reeves leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Mia, what if I told you that I've worked with people who have experiences similar to yours? Not exactly the same, of course. Your case is unique. But I've helped individuals with extraordinary memory abilities learn to manage and even harness their gifts." My heart began to race. "Really? There are others like me?" "Not exactly like you," Dr. Reeves clarified, "but there are people with highly superior autobiographical memory, or HSM. They remember their lives in extraordinary detail, and while their abilities aren't as extreme as yours, many of the coping strategies we've developed might be adaptable to your situation." Hope, fragile and tentative, began to bloom in my chest. What kind of strategies? Dr. Reeves smiled. Well, that's what we're going to work on together. But one key aspect is learning to compartmentalize, to create mental files for your memories, so you can access them when you need to, but keep them from overwhelming you constantly. As she spoke, I found myself hanging on every word. For the first time since this nightmare began, someone was offering more than just sympathy or sedation. Dr. Reeves was offering a path forward. When can we start? I asked, surprised by the eagerness in my own voice. Dr. Reeves chuckled. How about now? Let's start with a simple exercise. Close your eyes for me, Mia. I hesitated for a moment, then complied. In the darkness behind my eyelids, the memories surged forward, threatening to overwhelm me. Now, Dr. Reeves's voice came, steady and calming. I want you to imagine a large filing cabinet. Can you see it? I nodded, struggling to hold the image in my mind against the onslaught of memories. Good. Now imagine opening one of the drawers. Inside you see folders. Each folder represents a category of memories. Can you see them? Yes, I whispered, the image becoming clearer in my mind. Excellent. Now I want you to focus on one specific memory, any memory, and imagine placing it into the appropriate folder. I thought of my first day of college, the excitement and nervousness I'd felt. With tremendous effort, I visualized placing that memory into a folder labeled Education. I did it, I said, my voice shaky with surprise. Wonderful, Mia, Dr. Reeves exclaimed. Now slowly open your eyes. As I did, I was startled to realize that for those few moments, the constant barrage of memories had quieted. It wasn't gone entirely, but it had become manageable. How do you feel, Doctor? Reeves asked, her eyes searching my face. It's quieter, I said in wonder. The memories are still there, but they're not as overwhelming. How is that possible? Dr. Reeves smiled. What we just did was a very basic form of cognitive compartmentalization. By giving your mind a structure to organize memories, we're teaching it to exert some control over your recall. It's just a first step, but with practice, you can learn to do this more effectively and for longer periods. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine smile tugging at my lips. Can we do more? Absolutely, Dr. Reeves nodded. But let's not overdo it on the first day. This is just the beginning, Mia. We have a long road ahead, but I believe you have the strength to walk it. As our session came to an end, I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The constant pressure of memories was still there, but it felt different, less oppressive somehow. Same time tomorrow? I asked, surprised by the hopefulness in my own voice. Dr. Reeves nodded, her smile warm. I'll be here. And Mia? I'm proud of the work you did today. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. As she left, I sat back in my chair, my mind buzzing with possibilities. For the first time since this ordeal began, I allowed myself to imagine a future where I could coexist with my enhanced memory, rather than being controlled by it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of routine activities, but I approached them with a new energy. During group therapy, I found myself actually listening to the other patients' stories, rather than getting lost in my own memories. At dinner, I managed to eat a full meal, the taste of the food no longer triggering an overwhelming cascade of culinary memories. That night, as I lay in my bed, the familiar fear of sleep, of dreams filled with perfect, inescapable memories, began to creep in. But then I remembered Dr. Reeves's exercise. Closing my eyes, I visualized the filing cabinet, methodically sorting the events of the day into their appropriate folders. As I drifted off to sleep, I held on to that image, using it as an anchor against the tide of memories. And for the first time in months, my dreams were just dreams, vivid and detailed, yes, but no longer the paralyzing recreations of my past that had haunted me for so long. I woke the next morning feeling different. The constant pressure of memories was still there, but it felt more distant, less immediate. As I went through my morning routine, I found myself looking forward to my next session with Dr. Reeves with an eagerness I hadn't felt for anything in a long time. As I sat in the common room, waiting for our appointment, I caught sight of my reflection in a window. The person looking back at me was still pale and drawn, with dark circles under her eyes, but there was something different in her gaze, a spark that hadn't been there before, a glimmer of hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. The road ahead would be long and difficult, I knew. Learning to live with my enhanced memory would be a constant struggle. But with Dr. Reeves's help and the techniques she was teaching me, I finally felt like I had a fighting chance. As I saw Dr. Reeves approaching, a small smile tugged at my lips. I was ready for today's session, ready to take another step on this journey. The memories were still there, perfect and overwhelming. But now, finally, I was beginning to see them not just as a curse, but as a challenge to be overcome. The glimmer of hope I'd felt yesterday had grown stronger. It wasn't much, just a tiny flame in the darkness of my mind. But it was there, and I was determined to nurture it, to let it grow until it could light my way back to a life worth living. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of my room in the psychiatric ward, casting long shadows across the floor. I blinked awake, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then, as it had every morning for the past few weeks, the flood of memories rushed in. But today, something was different. The memories were still there, vivid and perfect as ever, but they felt muted somehow. Less overwhelming. I took a deep breath, focusing on the mental filing cabinet Dr. Reeves had taught me to visualize. With careful concentration, I began sorting through the memories of the previous day, filing them away one by one. A soft knock at the door interrupted my mental exercise. "Mia," Nurse Olivia's voice called. "Are you awake? Dr. Reeves is here for your morning session." "Come in," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Dr. Reeves entered, her warm smile a now familiar sight. "Good morning, Mia. How are you feeling today?" I sat up in bed, considering the question. "I'm okay, I think. The memories are still there, but they feel less intrusive." Dr. Reeves nodded encouragingly. "That's excellent progress, Mia. You've been working hard on your cognitive compartmentalization techniques. Are you ready to try something new today?" A mixture of excitement and apprehension fluttered in my chest. "What did you have in mind?" "I think you're ready to start reintegrating with the world a bit more," Dr. Reeves said, her tone gentle but firm. "How would you feel about joining the group therapy session this morning?" My heart rate quickened at the thought. I don't know. What if I get overwhelmed? What if hearing other people's stories triggers too many memories? Dr. Reeves sat on the edge of my bed, her eyes kind. "It's a risk, yes, but it's also an opportunity to practice your coping skills in a controlled environment. Remember, Mia, the goal isn't to eliminate your memories or to never feel overwhelmed. It's to learn how to manage those feelings when they arise." I took a deep breath, weighing her words. Part of me wanted to refuse, to stay in the safety of my room where I could control the stimuli. But another part, a growing part, longed for connection, for a chance to feel human again. "Okay," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll try." Dr. Reeves beamed. "I'm proud of you, Mia. This is a big step. Now let's go over some strategies you can use if you start to feel overwhelmed during the session." An hour later, I found myself sitting in a circle with 7 other patients, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. The group leader, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Martinez, smiled encouragingly at me. "We have a new member joining us today," she announced. "Everyone, this is Mia. Mia, would you like to introduce yourself?" All eyes turned to me and I felt a wave of panic rising. Memories of every introduction I'd ever made, every awkward social situation I'd ever been in, threatened to overwhelm me. But then I remembered Dr. Reeves's advice. I took a deep breath, visualizing my mental filing cabinet. "Hi," I managed, my voice shaky but audible. "I'm Mia. I'm here because I have an enhanced memory that sometimes makes it hard for me to function." Dr. Martinez nodded encouragingly. "Thank you for sharing, Mia. Can you tell us a bit more about what that's like for you?" I swallowed hard, fighting against the tide of memories. It's like living with a perfect recording of every moment of my life playing constantly in my head. Every sight, sound, smell, it's all there, all the time. It can be overwhelming. A man across the circle leaned forward, his eyes wide with interest. "That sounds intense. Is it like having a superpower?" The question triggered a cascade of memories. The excitement I'd felt when I first realized the extent of my enhanced memory, the pride in my academic achievements, the gradual realization that this gift was becoming a curse. I closed my eyes, focusing on my breathing as I sorted through the memories. "It can feel that way sometimes," I said slowly, opening my eyes. "But mostly, it feels like drowning in my own mind." The session continued, with other patients sharing their struggles and triumphs. To my surprise, I found myself listening intently, genuinely interested in their stories. Yes, each one triggered memories of my own similar experiences, but I was able to file them away, to stay present in the moment. As the session drew to a close, Dr. Martinez turned to me once more. "Mia, how are you feeling after participating today?" I paused, taking stock of my emotions. "I'm okay," I said, a note of wonder in my voice. It was challenging, but I think it helped. To hear that other people struggle too, even if it's not in the same way. Dr. Martinez smiled warmly. "That's often the most powerful aspect of group therapy. Thank you for sharing with us today, Mia." As I left the room, I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The constant barrage of memories was still there, but I had managed to participate in a social situation without being completely overwhelmed. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Dr. Reeves was waiting for me outside. "How did it go?" she asked, her eyes searching my face. "It was intense," I admitted. "But I did it. I actually did it." Her smile was radiant. "You should be very proud of yourself, Mia. This is significant progress." The rest of the day passed in a blur of therapy sessions and quiet moments of reflection. By the time evening rolled around, I felt drained but oddly accomplished. As I sat in the common room, absently flipping through a magazine, Dr. Reeves approached me once more. "Mia," she said, her tone serious, "I have a proposition for you. How would you feel about taking a short trip outside the facility tomorrow?" My heart leapt into my throat. "Outside? I don't know if I'm ready for that." Dr. Reeves sat beside me, her expression gentle but determined. "I think you are. It would just be a short walk in the hospital gardens. I'll be with you the entire time, but I believe it's important for you to start reintegrating with the outside world." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar panic rising. The thought of all the stimuli outside, all the potential triggers for my perfect memory, was terrifying. But then I thought about the progress I'd made, about the techniques I'd learned. "Okay," I said finally, opening my eyes to meet Dr. Reeves's gaze. "I'll try." The next morning dawned bright and clear. As I stood at the door leading to the hospital gardens, my heart was pounding so hard I was sure Dr. Reeves could hear it. "Remember," she said softly, "we can come back anytime you feel overwhelmed. Just use the techniques we've practiced. Are you ready?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. As the door opened, I was hit with a wall of sensory input, the warmth of the sun on my skin, the scent of flowers in the air, the sound of birds chirping in the distance. For a moment I froze, overwhelmed by the flood of memories each sensation triggered, but then I took a deep breath, visualizing my mental filing cabinet. Slowly, methodically, I began to sort through the memories, filing them away. As I did, the present moment came into sharper focus. "I'm okay," I whispered, more to myself than to Dr. Reeves. "I can do this." We walked slowly through the garden, Dr. Reeves pointing out different flowers and plants. With each step, I felt more grounded in the present, more able to experience the moment without being dragged into the past. As we rounded a corner, I caught sight of a small pond. The sunlight glinted off its surface, creating a dazzling display of light and color. Without thinking, I stopped, mesmerized by the sight. "It's beautiful," I breathed. Dr. Reeves smiled. "Yes, it is. How does it make you feel, Mia?" I considered the question, surprised to find that for once I wasn't immediately overwhelmed by memories of every body of water I'd ever seen. "Peaceful," I said finally. "It makes me feel peaceful." As we made our way back to the ward, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The outside world was still overwhelming, still full of potential triggers for my perfect memory. But I had faced it, had experienced moments of genuine presence and peace. Back in my room, Dr. Reeves turned to me with a serious expression. "Mia, I'm very proud of the progress you've made. I think it's time we started discussing the next steps in your treatment." "Next steps?" I asked, a mixture of hope and apprehension in my voice. Dr. Reeves nodded. "Yes, you've shown remarkable improvement in managing your symptoms here in the controlled environment of the ward. But eventually we need to work towards reintegrating you into your normal life." The thought sent a shiver of fear through me, but it was tempered by a spark of excitement. For the first time in months, the idea of returning to my life outside the hospital didn't seem entirely impossible. "Do you think I'm ready for that?" I asked hesitantly. "Not yet," Dr. Reeves said honestly, "but I think we can start working towards it. It will be a gradual process with many small steps along the way. But I believe you're on the right path, Mia." As I lay in bed that night, my mind buzzed with the events of the day. The memories were still there, perfect and vivid as ever. But they no longer felt like an insurmountable obstacle. Instead, they were a challenge to be faced, a hurdle to be overcome. For the first time since this ordeal began, I allowed myself to think about the future with something other than dread. The road ahead would be long and difficult, I knew. Learning to live with my enhanced memory in the real world would be a constant struggle. But as I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. The struggle for balance was far from over, but I was no longer fighting alone. With each small victory, each moment of peace amidst the chaos of my mind, I was reclaiming my life, one memory at a time. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees on the Boston University campus, carrying with it the scent of fallen leaves and new beginnings. I stood at the entrance to the neuroscience department, my heart pounding in my chest. It had been 6 months since I'd last set foot here, 6 months since my life had been turned upside down by the memory enhancement experiment. "You can do this, Mia." Dr. Reeves's voice came from beside me, steady and reassuring. "Remember your techniques, take it one step at a time." I nodded, taking a deep breath. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the door handle, but I forced myself to push through. The familiar smell of the building hit me immediately, triggering a cascade of memories. Every class I'd attended, every late-night study session, every moment of triumph and failure in my academic career. For a moment, I felt myself starting to slip, the memories threatening to overwhelm me. But then I closed my eyes, visualizing my mental filing cabinet. With practiced ease, I began sorting through the memories, filing them away one by one. "I'm okay," I said, opening my eyes to meet Dr. Reeves's concerned gaze. "I can handle this." She smiled, pride evident in her eyes. "I know you can, Mia. Now let's go meet with the department head." As we walked through the corridors, I couldn't help but notice the curious glances from students and faculty alike. Word of my condition had spread, and I could almost feel the weight of their stares. But I kept my head high, focusing on the techniques Dr. Reeves had taught me. Professor Harrington was waiting for us in his office, his face a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Mia," he said, rising to greet us. "It's good to see you back on your feet. How are you feeling?" The question, simple as it was, carried the weight of months of struggle and recovery. I took a moment to consider my answer, determined to be honest. "I'm managing, Professor. It's still challenging, but I'm learning to cope with my enhanced memory." He nodded, gesturing for us to sit. "I've been following your case with great interest, Mia. Dr. Chen has kept me updated on your progress. I must say I'm impressed by your resilience." "Thank you, sir," I said, a small spark of pride igniting in my chest. "It hasn't been easy, but I'm determined to continue my research. That's why I'm here today." Professor Harrington leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Yes, Dr. Reeves mentioned you wanted to discuss returning to your studies. Are you sure you're ready for that?" I felt Dr. Reeves's hand on my arm, a silent show of support. Taking a deep breath, I met Professor Harrington's gaze. "I am, sir. In fact, I believe my experience gives me a unique perspective on memory and cognition. I want to redirect my research to focus on the effects of enhanced memory on the human mind." For a long moment, Professor Harrington was silent, his brow furrowed in thought. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. That's actually brilliant, Mia. Your first-hand experience could provide invaluable insights into this field of study." Relief washed over me, and I felt some of the tension leave my body. "Thank you, Professor. I've been working on a preliminary research proposal. With your permission, I'd like to present it to the department for consideration." "Of course," he nodded enthusiastically. "We'll set up a presentation for next week. But Mia," his tone turned serious, "I need to know that you can handle the pressures of academic life. Your health has to come first." "I understand, sir," I said, my voice steady. "Dr. Reeves and I have been working on strategies to manage my condition in various environments. I'm prepared to take on this challenge." As we left Professor Harrington's office, I felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The prospect of returning to my research, of using my experience to potentially help others, filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Reeves asked as we made our way out of the building. I paused, taking stock of my emotions. "Overwhelmed," I admitted. "But in a good way, I think. For the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful." Dr. Reeves smiled warmly. "That's wonderful, Mia. But remember, this is just the beginning. There will be challenges ahead, moments when your enhanced memory might feel like too much to bear. Are you prepared for that?" I nodded, my resolve strengthening. "I am. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to face whatever comes. This is my chance to turn this curse into something positive." Over the next week, I threw myself into preparing for my presentation. Every waking moment was spent researching, writing, and refining my proposal. My enhanced memory, once a source of torment, now became a powerful tool. I could recall every relevant study I'd ever read, every lecture I'd ever attended with perfect clarity. But with this intense focus came new challenges. There were moments when the flood of information threatened to overwhelm me, when the line between memory and present reality blurred. In those moments, I relied heavily on the coping mechanisms Dr. Reeves had taught me. The day of the presentation arrived all too quickly. As I stood before the assembled faculty and graduate students, I felt a familiar panic rising in my chest. The sea of faces before me triggered a cascade of memories, every presentation I'd ever given, every moment of academic triumph and failure. For a moment I froze, the words of my carefully prepared speech evaporating from my mind. But then I caught sight of Dr. Reeves in the audience, her encouraging nod grounding me in the present. I took a deep breath, visualizing my mental filing cabinet, and began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, What I'm about to present to you today is not just a research proposal. It's a journey, my journey, through the uncharted territory of enhanced memory. As I spoke detailing my experiences and the potential implications for the field of neuroscience, I could see the audience's skepticism give way to interest, then to outright fascination. Every question thrown my way was met with a comprehensive, articulate response, my perfect recall allowing me to draw connections and insights that left even the most experienced professors nodding in appreciation. When the presentation ended, the room erupted in applause. Professor Harrington approached me, his eyes shining with excitement. "Mia, that was remarkable. I think I speak for the entire department when I say we're eager to see where this research leads." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. My proposal was approved, and I found myself diving headfirst back into academic life. But this time, things were different. My enhanced memory, once a burden, had become my greatest asset in my research. Yet, the challenges remained. There were days when the constant influx of new information, combined with my perfect recall of every past experience, left me feeling overwhelmed and disoriented. On those days, I leaned heavily on the support system I'd built, Dr. Reeves, my family, and the few close friends who had stuck by me through my ordeal. One evening, as I sat in my small campus apartment, poring over data from my latest experiment, a knock at the door startled me from my concentration. It was Emma, my ex-girlfriend, whom I hadn't seen since my breakdown months ago. "Emma," I breathed, shock and a flood of memories momentarily rendering me speechless. "What are you doing here?" She smiled hesitantly, her eyes searching my face. "I heard about your research, Mia. It's all over the department. I wanted to see how you were doing." For a moment, I was transported back to our last encounter. The pain, the fear, the overwhelming tide of memories that had driven me to push her away. But this time I was able to file those memories away, to stay grounded in the present. "I'm doing better," I said, surprised to find that I meant it. "It's still hard sometimes, but I'm learning to manage. Would you like to come in?" As Emma stepped into my apartment, I felt a mixture of emotions: joy at seeing her again, fear of what her presence might trigger, hope for what this moment might mean. But underlying it all was a sense of strength I hadn't felt in a long time. We talked for hours, catching up on the months we'd been apart. I told her about my struggles, my therapy, my new research. She listened with rapt attention, her eyes filled with a mixture of awe and concern. "Mia," she said finally, reaching out to take my hand, "I'm so proud of you. What you're doing. It's incredible. You're taking this challenge and using it to help others. It's amazing." Her words, and the warmth of her touch, triggered a flood of memories. Every moment we'd shared, every laugh, every tear. But this time, the memories didn't overwhelm me. Instead, they felt like a part of me, a tapestry of experiences that had shaped who I was. As Emma left that night promising to stay in touch, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. My enhanced memory was still there, still perfect and all-encompassing, but it no longer felt like a curse. Instead, it had become a part of me, a unique aspect of who I was. Standing before the mirror in my bathroom, I studied my reflection. The woman looking back at me was different from the scared, overwhelmed girl who had first entered the psychiatric ward. There were new lines of stress around my eyes, yes, but also a strength and determination that hadn't been there before. "This is who you are now," I told my reflection. Changed, challenged, but unbroken. As I prepared for bed that night, my mind buzzing with ideas for my research and plans for the future, I realized something. This was my new normal, a life of constant balance between my perfect past and my present reality. A life of challenges, yes, but also of incredible potential. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be days when the memories threatened to overwhelm me, when the weight of perfect recall felt too heavy to bear. But I was no longer afraid of those moments. I had the tools to cope, the strength to persevere, and a purpose that drove me forward. As I drifted off to sleep, my mind for once quiet and at peace, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't truly felt since this journey began: excitement for the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them, armed with my extraordinary memory and the resilience I'd fought so hard to build. This was my new normal, and for the first time in a long time, I was truly okay with that.